I stood up during my dad's funeral and told his wife to shut up. The entire chapel went silent. 200 faces turned toward me like I'd just committed murder. My stepmom's mouth hung open mid-sentence, frozen in the middle of her tearful speech about what an amazing husband and father he was. What a devoted family man. What a hero. I couldn't take it anymore. For 20 minutes, she'd been standing at that podium, weaving this beautiful fairy tale about a man who tucked his kids in at night and never missed a soccer game, about family dinners and camping trips and bedtime stories. The people in the pews were dabbing their eyes, nodding along, eating up every word, but I was sitting in the second row, my hands clenched so tight my nails drew blood, watching her performance. My real mom sat next to me, her face blank. She hadn't said a word since we arrived, just stared at the casket like she was looking at a stranger. "Shut up," I said again, louder this time. "Just shut up." My stepmom's face went from shocked to furious. My uncle stood up from his seat, moving toward me. "Sit down," he hissed. "This isn't the time. This is exactly the time," I shot back, because my dad's body was right there in that mahogany casket she'd picked out, the expensive one with gold handles and silk lining. The one she'd charged to his estate while claiming she was too grief-stricken to make decisions. And she was up there lying to everyone about who he really was. I walked to the front of the chapel. My legs felt like they might give out, but I kept moving. My stepmom backed away from the podium like I was contagious. Her perfectly applied makeup was starting to run. "Good. You want to know who my dad really was?" I said, gripping the sides of the podium. "Let me tell you. My dad had two families. My stepmom knew about us for 5 years before he died. 5 years of him splitting holidays, making excuses, living a double life. My real mom thought he was working late or traveling for business. His wife thought he was visiting his sick brother across the state. The truth was, my dad was living in 2 houses, maintaining 2 complete lives. He had another daughter. My half-sister was sitting in the back row right now. She was 11 years old, and until 3 days ago, she thought her daddy hung the moon. The gasps rippled through the crowd. I saw people turning, trying to spot her. My stepmom's face had gone white. But that's not even the worst part, I continued. My voice was shaking now. 4 months ago, my dad collapsed at my mom's house. Heart attack. Massive. He died in her arms calling out for his wife. Except he wasn't calling for my stepmom. He was calling for my mom. His real first love. The woman he'd been with for 18 years before he married you. My stepmom tried to grab the microphone. I yanked it away. "Want to know why I'm telling you this?" I asked the crowd. "Because 3 days after he died, she showed up at my mom's door with a lawyer. She's trying to take our house. The house my dad bought for us. The house where his other daughter grew up. She's claiming my mom was just his mistress and has no legal right to anything." The funeral director was moving toward me now. I had maybe 30 seconds left. "So before you all leave here today, crying about what a great man he was, I needed you to know the truth. My dad was a liar, a cheater, a coward who couldn't pick a life, so he lived too. And when he died, he left behind a mess that destroyed 3 women and 2 children. I turned to my stepmom. Her mascara was running down her face in black rivers. "You want this funeral?" I said quietly. "You want to play the grieving widow? Fine. But I'm about to tell them what you did the day after he died. What you took from his safe. The documents you destroyed." Her eyes went wide. "Unless you drop the lawsuit by Monday," I continued, "everyone here is going to find out that you knew. You knew about us from the beginning. You knew because you were the one who helped him set up the second bank account. You were the one who suggested he buy my mom that house, to keep her quiet and comfortable and out of your way." The crowd was in complete chaos now. People were standing, shouting questions. My uncle was trying to reach me, but my mom's brother blocked his path. The funeral director had given up and was just standing there with his hands raised like he could somehow restore order. My stepmom's lawyer friend was pushing through the crowd toward her, but I wasn't done. I pulled out my phone and held it up. "On the day my dad died," I said loudly, "my mom found his phone in his jacket. She was going to give it to his wife, to his other family, but then she saw something. Messages. Hundreds of them. Between my dad and his wife, planning this whole thing, discussing how to structure his assets, how to make sure my mom never had legal claim to anything." I started reading from the screenshots. February 12th. My dad texts, "She's starting to ask questions about where the money goes." His wife responds, "Stick to the story. Your brother's medical bills. She won't check." March 3rd. My dad texts, "What if she finds out?" His wife responds, "She won't. And if she does, we'll say you felt sorry for her. Charity case. No court will side with a mistress." My voice cracked, but I kept going. April 18th, just 2 weeks before he died. My dad texts, "I'm tired of lying. I want to tell her the truth." And you know what his loving wife said? The woman standing right here, crying about losing her soulmate? I looked directly at my stepmom. Her face was completely pale now. She said, "If you tell her anything, I'll make sure she ends up with nothing. Not the house, not a penny, not even your name on the death certificate. She'll be erased." Someone in the crowd yelled something I couldn't make out. My stepmom was backing toward the side door. Her lawyer friend grabbed her arm, trying to pull her out. "But wait," I said, my voice rising. "There's more." I swiped to another screenshot. Because it turns out my dad wasn't the one who wanted 2 families. He wanted to leave his wife. He wanted to come back to my mom, to make it official, to finally do the right thing. But every time he tried, she threatened him. May 2nd, I read. My dad texts, "I'm going to tell her everything. I can't live like this anymore." His wife responds, "Do it and I'll report you for embezzlement. Those fund transfers you did for my brother's business? I kept copies, backdated them. You'll go to prison." The silence was deafening now. Even the funeral director had stopped moving. My dad was trapped, I said quietly. For 16 years, he was trapped in a marriage with a woman who blackmailed him into staying, who threatened to destroy him if he left. So he created a second life with my mom, the woman he actually loved. The woman he'd loved since high school, before his wife's family money got in the way. I looked at the crowd. These were my dad's coworkers, his extended family, his neighbors from the nice house where he lived with his wife. Most of them had no idea I even existed. My mom worked 2 jobs to support us, I continued, because my dad couldn't risk putting us on his insurance or claiming us on his taxes. My stepmom controlled everything. Every dollar, every asset, every piece of paper with his name on it. She made him sign a post-nup when she found out about us, making sure that if he ever left, she'd get everything and he'd be prosecuted for fraud. My stepmom finally found her voice. "This is insane!" she shrieked. "She's making this up. She's trying to—" I held up the phone. "Want me to forward these to everyone?" I asked. "Because I've got 5 years of messages. Threats, manipulation, abuse. The time you told my dad if he bought my little sister school supplies, you'd drain his retirement account. The time you locked him out of the house for 3 days because he missed your friend's wedding to attend my middle school graduation." Her lawyer was whispering urgently in her ear. She was shaking her head violently. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, looking directly at her. "You're going to drop the lawsuit. You're going to release any claim on the house my mom lives in. You're going to split the actual marital assets 50-50 with my mom, recognizing their common law status. And you're going to set up a trust fund for my little sister, the daughter you've been pretending doesn't exist." "Never," my stepmom spat. "I'm his legal wife. I have rights." "You have rights?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Let me tell you about rights. My mom has rights to the 18 years she spent loving a man who was being held hostage by a manipulative, controlling, abusive woman. My little sister has rights to a father who wanted to claim her but couldn't, because his wife threatened to ruin his life. And I have rights to stand here and tell everyone exactly what kind of person you are." I turned to the crowd. Most people looked shell-shocked. Some were crying. My mom's friends were nodding, clearly having suspected something over the years. My dad's co-workers looked confused, trying to reconcile the man they knew with this story. "My dad wasn't perfect," I said. "He should have been stronger. He should have gone to the police, gotten a lawyer, done something. But he was scared. Scared of losing his career, scared of prison, scared of losing the little bit of happiness he'd found with my mom and sister." I paused, letting that sink in. "The only thing my dad did right in the end," I continued, "was leave a second will. One his wife didn't know about. One he filed with a different lawyer 6 months before he died. One that splits everything equally between his 2 families and names my uncle as executor instead of her." My stepmom's face went from white to gray. "Got you," I thought. "That's not possible," she said, but her voice wavered. "I'm the executor. He wouldn't trust you anymore?" I finished. "You're right. He didn't. Turns out my dad finally grew a spine in his last year. He documented everything. The threats, the financial abuse, the emotional manipulation. He recorded conversations. He kept a journal. And he left it all with his lawyer, with instructions to release it if you ever tried to cut out his other family." I nodded toward the back of the chapel. My dad's lawyer stood up, a manila folder in his hands. He looked apologetic but determined. "Mr. Patterson here has been very patient," I said, "waiting to see if you'd do the right thing. But since you showed up at my mom's house with a lawsuit 3 days after his death, trying to make us homeless, he decided it was time to execute my dad's real wishes." Mr. Patterson walked down the aisle. Everyone parted for him like he was carrying a bomb. He handed a document to my stepmom. She stared at it like it might bite her. "As you'll see," Mr. Patterson said in a calm, professional voice, "your late husband amended his will 16 months ago. The document is properly witnessed, notarized, and filed with the county. Mrs. Fitzgerald here," he nodded to my mom, "is recognized as his common-law spouse under state law, given their 18-year relationship and shared household. All assets are to be divided equally." My stepmom was reading the document, her hands shaking. Her lawyer friend grabbed it, scanned it, then whispered something in her ear. She shook her head in disbelief. "But I didn't know," my stepmom said weakly. "He never told me." You thought you had him trapped forever?" I said. "You thought he'd never fight back? You were wrong." I walked back to my seat, my legs trembling so badly I almost fell. My mom grabbed my hand, squeezed it tight. Her eyes were wet, but she was smiling, just a little. The funeral director finally found his courage. "Perhaps we should take a brief recess," he said nervously. "Allow everyone to process." "No," my stepmom said suddenly. "No recess. We're finishing this service. For my husband," I spun around. "Your husband?" I said. "You mean the man you blackmailed into staying married to you? The man you abused and controlled for 16 years? That husband?" She drew herself up, trying to look dignified despite the mascara running down her face and the legal document crumpling in her fist. "I loved him," she said. "Whatever you think of me, I loved him. You loved controlling him." I shot back. "There's a difference." My mom stood up beside me. Her voice was quiet, but it carried through the whole chapel. "You knew about me from the beginning," she said to my stepmom. You knew because you hired a private investigator when you suspected he was seeing someone. You knew before I did that he was married. That's not true, my stepmom said, but her voice was weak. August 14th, 16 years ago, my mom continued, you showed up at the restaurant where he'd taken me for my birthday. You walked right up to our table and introduced yourself as his wife. You smiled and shook my hand and told me I had lovely eyes. Then you told him if he ever saw me again, you'd destroy him. The crowd was completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop, but he kept seeing me anyway, my mom said. Because we loved each other. We'd loved each other since we were 17 years old, before you ever came into the picture with your family money and your connections and your threats. And when I got pregnant with his daughter, he wanted to leave you. But you told him you'd already altered financial documents to make it look like he'd been embezzling from your family business. You'd created a paper trail that would send him to prison. My stepmom said nothing. Her lawyer was pulling her toward the door, but she wasn't moving. So we made an arrangement. My mom continued. He'd stay married to you legally. He'd keep up appearances. But he'd live with me and our daughter. He'd be the father he wanted to be. And you'd pretend not to know as long as he kept funneling money into your accounts and playing the devoted husband at your society parties. It wasn't like that, my stepmom whispered. It was exactly like that, my mom said. And every time he wanted to change the arrangement, every time he wanted to make it official, you'd pull out those fake documents and remind him what you could do to him. You held him hostage for 16 years. I didn't, my stepmom said, but tears were streaming down her face now. I just wanted him to stay. I just wanted my marriage. You wanted control, I said. That's all you ever wanted. And now you don't have it anymore. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat. There's one more thing, he said. He pulled out another document. Per your late husband's will, Mrs. Fitzgerald and her daughter are to live in the house he purchased for them, mortgage-free, with all utilities and maintenance paid from the estate in perpetuity. You, he looked at my stepmom, retain the marital home and half of all other assets. The remainder goes to Mrs. Fitzgerald and provisions for both daughters' education. My stepmom was sobbing now, ugly crying that made her whole body shake. All those years, she said. All those years I stood by him. All those years you held him prisoner, I corrected. There's a difference. My uncle, my mom's brother, finally spoke up. I think we've said enough, he said gently. Let's let the man rest in peace. Peace, I said bitterly. My dad didn't know peace for 16 years, but sure. Let's pretend this was a normal funeral for a normal family. I walked to the casket. It was closed, per my stepmom's wishes. She'd said she wanted people to remember him as he was. Really, she just hadn't wanted anyone to see that he'd lost 40 pounds in his final year from stress. I pressed my hand against the polished wood. Bye, Dad, I said quietly. I wish you'd been braver. I wish you'd fought harder. But I understand why you didn't. And I'm going to make sure your other daughter knows she was wanted, that you loved her, that you tried. My little sister appeared at my side. She was 11, small for her age, with our dad's eyes. She'd been staying with my mom's friend during the service because we'd thought it would be too overwhelming. Apparently, she'd convinced someone to bring her anyway. Was he really trapped? She asked me, her voice small. I knelt down to her level. Yeah, I said. He was. But he loved you. He loved us. And he did the best he could. Why didn't he just leave? She asked. Grown-ups can leave if they want to. Sometimes it's more complicated than that, I said. Sometimes people use fear to keep you in place. And sometimes you're so deep in it that you can't see a way out. She looked at the casket, then at my stepmom, who was being led out by her lawyer and 2 friends. Is she going to take our house? She asked. No, I said firmly. She's not. Dad made sure of that. Good, she said. Then she walked up to the casket and put her small hand on it, next to where mine had been. I love you, Daddy, she whispered, even though you were scared. My heart broke a little. This kid had more wisdom and grace than any of us deserved. The funeral director approached cautiously. Would you like to say any final words? He asked me, before we proceed with the burial. I looked around the chapel. Half the crowd had left during the confrontation. The ones who remained were mostly my mom's friends and a few of my dad's coworkers who looked genuinely disturbed by what they'd learned. My stepmom's friends had all fled with her. Yeah, I said. I'd like to say something. I walked back to the podium. My hands were steadier now. My dad lived 2 lives, I said. In one life, he was a successful businessman, a respectable husband, a member of the country club. In the other life, he was a dad who made pancakes on Saturday mornings, who helped with homework at the kitchen table, who fell asleep on the couch during movie nights. I paused, gathering my thoughts. The first life was a lie. The second life was real. And the tragedy is that he spent 16 years being punished for wanting the real life to be his only life, for wanting to love who he loved without fear. A few people nodded. My mom was crying quietly. I'm angry at him, I continued. I'm angry that he wasn't stronger, that he let himself be manipulated, that he chose the easy path of living a double life instead of the hard path of fighting for his freedom. But I'm angrier at the woman who made him feel like he had no choice, who used fear and threats to keep him trapped, who cared more about appearances than about the man she claimed to love. My voice was getting stronger now. My dad wasn't perfect. He hurt people. He lied. He created a situation that damaged everyone involved. But he did it because he was trying to survive, because he was trying to hold on to the one real thing in his life, his family with my mom, while managing a woman who'd threatened to destroy him if he left. I looked directly at where my stepmom had been sitting, even though she was gone. And to everyone who knew him, who's going to walk out of here today with questions and judgments, I just want to say this. Look at your own life. Look at your own relationships. Ask yourself if you're living authentically or if you're trapped by expectations and fear. Because that's what killed my dad. Not the heart attack. The years of stress, of living two lives, of carrying the weight of secrets and threats and manipulation. I stepped back from the podium. That's all I have to say. You can remember him however you want, but I'll remember him as a man who loved my mom, who loved me and my sister, and who tried his best in an impossible situation. And I'll make sure my sister remembers that too. The service ended quietly after that. There was no reception, no gathering. My stepmom had planned one at her house, but nobody wanted to go after what they'd heard. People just drifted away, whispering to each other, casting uncertain glances at my mom and me and my little sister. My dad's business partner approached me as I was helping my sister into the car. He was an older man, maybe 60, with kind eyes and a weathered face. I'd met him a few times over the years when he'd stopped by our house. He'd always seemed confused by my dad's living situation, but never asked questions. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "I suspected something wasn't right. Your dad would come to work sometimes looking like he hadn't slept in days. He'd get phone calls that would make him go pale. Once I heard him arguing with someone about money, about threats. I should have asked. Should have done something. You couldn't have known," I said. He shook his head. "I knew enough. I just chose not to look closer. That's on me." He handed me a business card. "If you or your mom need anything," he said. "Jobs, references, legal help, anything. Your dad was a good man in an impossible situation. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." After he walked away, my mom turned to me. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Blow everything up like that." "Yes, I did," I said. "Because if I didn't, she would have taken everything. The house, the money, even Dad's memory. She would have erased us completely." My mom nodded slowly. "Your dad would have been proud," she said, "and terrified, but mostly proud." At the cemetery, only 15 people showed up for the burial. My mom, me, my sister, my uncle, my mom's parents, a few of my dad's coworkers, and Mr. Patterson, the lawyer. My stepmom was notably absent. As they lowered the casket, my sister started crying. I picked her up, even though she was getting too big for it. She wrapped her arms around my neck and sobbed into my shoulder. "I miss him," she said. "Even though he was scared, even though everything was confusing. I miss him." "I know," I said. "I miss him too." My mom stood next to us, one hand on my back, one hand on my sister's leg. We were holding each other up, the three of us. The family my dad had wanted, the family he'd fought for in his own flawed way. My mom's father, my grandpa, came over after the burial. He was a quiet man, a retired mechanic who'd never said much about my dad's situation. He put his hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing today," he said. "Your grandmother and I, we always knew something wasn't right. The way your dad would show up at holidays looking over his shoulder, the way he'd flinch when his phone rang. We tried to get your mom to leave to make him choose, but she loved him, and love makes people do foolish things." "Is that what you think Mom was?" I asked. "Foolish?" He shook his head. "I think she was loyal, patient, maybe too patient, but that's not a bad thing to be. She gave your dad a place to be himself. That's more than most people get." He squeezed my shoulder. "And you gave him justice. That's more than most people get too." That night, back at our house, the house that was now legally ours, we sat in the living room. My sister had cried herself to sleep on the couch. My mom and I were drinking tea, not saying much, just existing in the same space. "Do you think he knew?" My mom asked suddenly, "that it would end like this?" "I think he hoped," I said. "Why else would he have made that second will? He knew what she was capable of. He knew she'd try to erase us." My mom stared into her tea. "I should have made him choose," she said. "Years ago, when I first found out he was married, I should have walked away, made him deal with his own mess. Then I wouldn't exist," I pointed out. "And neither would she." I nodded toward my sleeping sister. My mom smiled sadly. "True, but maybe your dad would still be alive. Maybe the stress wouldn't have killed him. Or maybe he would have gone to prison on fake embezzlement charges and we'd never have known him at all," I said. "You can't rewrite history, Mom. You can only deal with what is." "When did you get so wise?" she asked. "When I had to grow up fast," I said. "When I realized my dad needed someone to fight for him since he couldn't fight for himself." The doorbell rang at 9. My mom tensed. I got up to answer it. It was my stepmom. She looked awful. No makeup, hair in a messy ponytail, sweatpants and a t-shirt. Nothing like the polished woman from the funeral. "Can we talk?" she asked. Her voice was hoarse. I should have said no, should have closed the door, but something in her face made me hesitate. 5 minutes, I said. "On the porch." "My mom doesn't want to see you." She nodded. "Fair." We sat on the porch steps, an awkward distance between us. She didn't speak for a long time, just stared at her hands. "I didn't mean for it to be like this," she finally said. "When I found out about you, about your mom, I was so angry. I wanted him to hurt the way I was hurting, so I made those threats. I altered those documents. I never thought he'd actually believe I'd use them, but you kept using them," I said. "For 16 years. "I know," she whispered. "Every time he tried to leave, I panicked. I couldn't lose him, so I'd remind him what I could do, and he'd stay. And I'd tell myself it was fine, that we were fine, that our marriage was fine. Your marriage was a prison, I said flatly. I know that now, she said. I've known for a while. But I didn't know how to stop, didn't know how to let go. So I just kept holding on tighter and tighter until there was nothing left to hold. She looked at me, her eyes red and swollen. I'm sorry, she said. I'm sorry to you, to your mom, to your sister. I'm sorry for the years your dad spent torn between two lives. I'm sorry for everything. Sorry doesn't fix it, I said. I know, she said, but it's all I have. We sat in silence. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. A car drove by with its windows down, music thumping. I'm not fighting the will, she said finally. Mr. Patterson's right. It's legal. And honestly, I don't have the heart for it anymore. I just want this to be over. What will you do? I asked, not sure why I cared. Sell the house, she said. Move somewhere new. Start over. Maybe figure out who I am without him, without the control, without the fear of losing someone I'd already lost years ago. She stood up, brushing off her sweatpants. For what it's worth, she said, he did love you. All of you. That was real. The only real thing in our entire marriage. She walked down the steps, got in her car, and drove away. I watched her taillights disappear down the street. My mom appeared in the doorway behind me. What did she want? She asked. To apologize, I said. I think. Do you believe her? Mom asked. I don't know, I admitted. Does it matter? My mom came and sat next to me on the steps. I suppose not, she said. What's done is done. We sat there for a while, mother and daughter, looking at the quiet street. This was our neighborhood now, our house, our life. No more secrets, no more lies, no more waiting for my dad to come home and split himself in half trying to be two different people. Do you think we'll be okay? I asked. My mom put her arm around me. I think we already are, she said. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork and meetings with Mr. Patterson. The estate was complicated. Years of hidden accounts and creative bookkeeping that my dad had used to support two households. Mr. Patterson was patient, walking us through every document, every decision. Your father was meticulous, he told us during one meeting. He documented everything in case something happened to him. Bank statements, property deeds, even a detailed letter explaining the situation. He wanted to make sure you were taken care of. Why didn't he just leave her? My mom asked for the 100th time. If he was documenting everything anyway, why not just go to the police? Mr. Patterson sighed. Fear is a powerful motivator, and she'd spent years building her case against him. The altered documents looked authentic. She had witnesses who would swear they'd seen him taking money. Even her brother was in on it, ready to testify. Your father calculated the odds and decided the risk was too high. So he just lived with it, I said bitterly. He protected you, Mr. Patterson corrected gently. He made sure that no matter what happened, you'd be taken care of. That's more than a lot of men would do. My sister started school again 2 weeks after the funeral. I walked her to the bus stop on her first day back. She was quiet, clutching her backpack straps. What if kids ask about Dad, she said. What do I tell them? Tell them the truth, I said. That he loved you, that he died. That's all they need to know. What if they ask about the funeral? She pressed. Kelsey's mom was there. She heard everything. Then tell them your family is complicated, I said. Most families are. Nobody has to know all the details. She nodded, but I could see the worry in her face. I knelt down. Listen to me, I said. What happened at that funeral wasn't your fault. None of this is your fault. You're allowed to love Dad and miss him and be angry at him all at the same time. You're allowed to feel however you feel. Even if I'm mad at him? She asked in a small voice. Especially then, I said. Being mad doesn't mean you didn't love him. It just means you're human. The bus pulled up. She hugged me tight, then ran to get on. I watched it drive away, taking my little sister to face a world that now knew our family secret. When I got home, my mom was on the phone with a lawyer. Not Mr. Patterson, but someone new. A family lawyer who specialized in custody cases. I hung up and turned to me. Your stepmom's family is causing problems, she said. They're claiming I kidnapped your dad from their daughter, that I seduced him. They're talking about filing a civil suit for alienation of affection. Can they do that? I asked. Technically, yes, my mom said, but our lawyer says they don't have a case, especially with all the evidence your dad left behind. But it's going to be expensive to fight. We have the money now, I pointed out. From the estate. My mom looked uncomfortable. I don't want to use his money to fight his wife's family, she said. It feels wrong. They're trying to take our home, I said. They're trying to destroy you. Use the money. That's what Dad would have wanted. How do you know? She asked. Because he left it to us, I said simply. He could have left it all to her. Could have left us nothing. But he didn't. He made sure we'd be okay. Don't let them take that away. My mom nodded slowly. Okay, she said. Okay. The civil suit came 3 weeks later. My stepmom's father, a retired judge with connections all over the state, filed on behalf of his daughter. The document was 30 pages of accusations. That my mom had deliberately seduced a married man. That she'd trapped him with a pregnancy. That she'd used manipulation and coercion to keep him from his lawful wife. It was complete nonsense, but it was also terrifying. They had money, connections, power. We had the truth, but would that be enough? Our lawyer was a woman named Diane, mid-50s, with gray hair and sharp eyes. She read through the lawsuit and laughed. This is garbage, she said. Pure fiction. But we'll need to prove it. We have the text messages, I said. The ones between Dad and his wife, showing how she threatened him. Those help, Diane said. But we need more. We need to show a pattern. We need witnesses who can testify to your parents' relationship, to your dad's state of mind, to the abuse he suffered. Over the next month, we built our case. My mom's friends testified about the years they'd known my parents, about seeing my dad at school events and family dinners. My dad's coworkers testified about his stress levels, about the phone calls that would make him panic. My grandparents testified about how my dad had begged them not to make my mom choose, how he'd been trapped and desperate. But the most powerful testimony came from an unexpected source. My dad's brother. I'd never met my uncle, my dad's actual brother. He lived in Montana, worked as a park ranger, and hadn't spoken to my dad in years after some family falling out. But when he heard about the lawsuit, he showed up at our lawyer's office with a box of letters. Your dad and I reconnected about 5 years ago, he told us. He started writing to me, telling me everything. About your mom, about you kids, about being trapped. I told him to leave, to come stay with me, but he said she'd have him arrested before he made it to the state line. He opened the box. Inside were dozens of letters, all in my dad's handwriting. Letters detailing the threats, the abuse, the fear. Letters about how much he loved us, how much he wanted to be free. Letters about suicide, about feeling hopeless, about not knowing how to escape. My mom read one and started crying. I grabbed her hand. Why didn't you come forward sooner? I asked my uncle. Why didn't you help him? He looked ashamed. I didn't think it was as bad as he said, he admitted. I thought he was exaggerating, being dramatic. I told him to man up and handle it. I was an idiot. He looked at my mom. I'm sorry, he said. I should have believed him. I should have done something. My mom nodded, unable to speak. The trial lasted 3 days. My stepmom's family brought witnesses who testified about what a wonderful couple my dad and his wife had been, friends who'd seen them at parties, looking happy, neighbors who'd never suspected anything was wrong. Her father took the stand and painted my mom as a homewrecker, a manipulator, a woman who'd destroyed his daughter's marriage. Then it was our turn. Diane presented the text messages, the letters, the testimony from people who'd actually known what was happening. She called my dad's coworkers, who testified about his declining health, his stress, his fear. She called Mr. Patterson, who testified about the second will and what it revealed about my dad's true wishes. And then she called me. I was terrified. I'd never been in a courtroom before. The judge looked stern, the jury looked bored, and my stepmom's family lawyer looked like he wanted to eat me alive. But I told the truth. About growing up with a dad who was there but always looking over his shoulder. About the times he'd had to leave suddenly because his wife was calling, demanding to know where he was. About watching him lose weight, lose sleep, lose himself trying to maintain 2 lives. When I mentioned finding the text messages on his phone after he died, several jury members sat up straighter. The lawyer for my stepmom's family tried to rattle me. Isn't it true your mother knew your father was married when she started seeing him? She found out on their 3rd date, I said, when his wife showed up at the restaurant and threatened them both. But she continued the relationship, he pressed. Because she loved him, I said, and because he told her he was leaving his wife, that it was already over, that he just needed time to handle the legal side. But it wasn't over, was it? The lawyer said smugly. Not legally, I agreed. But emotionally, mentally, it had been over for years. My dad's marriage was a prison sentence he couldn't escape from. That's your opinion, the lawyer said. No, I said. That's what his own letters say. That's what the text messages prove. That's what every single person who actually knew him will tell you. The lawyer tried a different angle. Isn't it true you're just angry because your father couldn't acknowledge you publicly? That you're lashing out at his widow because you're jealous? I'm angry because she's trying to make us homeless 3 days after he died, I said. I'm angry because she abused my father for 16 years and now she's playing the victim. I'm angry because people like you are helping her do it. The judge warned me to keep my emotions in check, but I saw some of the jury members nodding. When my stepmom took the stand, Diane destroyed her. Every text message, every threat, every manipulation laid out for the jury to see. My stepmom tried to explain them away, tried to say they were taken out of context, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. When they came back, the foreman read the verdict. No liability. My mom had done nothing wrong. My stepmom's family owed us court costs and legal fees. My stepmom's father stood up, red-faced, and stormed out. Her mother followed, giving my mom a look of pure hatred. But my stepmom stayed in her seat, staring at her hands. As we left the courtroom, she called out to my mom. Please, she said, can we talk? Just for a minute? My mom hesitated, then nodded. I stayed close, ready to intervene if needed. I'm sorry, my stepmom said, for everything, for the lawsuit, for the threats, for all of it. I just couldn't accept that he loved you more than that he chose you, even when he couldn't leave me. He didn't choose, my mom said quietly. You took away his choice. My stepmom nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know, she whispered. I know. She looked at me. You were right, she said. About everything. I was controlling, manipulative, abusive. I told myself I was just protecting my marriage, but really I was just too scared to let go. What will you do now? My mom asked. My stepmom shrugged. Therapy, probably. My family won't speak to me anymore. They're furious I didn't fight harder, didn't lie on the stand. But I'm tired of lying, tired of fighting. Maybe it's time to figure out who I am without him, without all the control and fear. She walked away then, shoulders slumped, looking smaller somehow, less like the polished woman who'd given that speech at the funeral, more like someone who'd finally run out of fight. 3 months later, the estate was fully settled. My mom got half of everything plus our house and a substantial trust for my sister. My stepmom took her half and moved to Oregon. According to Mr. Patterson, she started over completely. New name, new life. Maybe she found peace. Maybe she didn't. Either way, it wasn't our problem anymore. My sister started seeing a therapist, a kind woman who specialized in childhood grief. She was working through everything, learning to hold both truths at once, that our dad loved her and that he failed her, that he tried and that it wasn't enough. One day, about 6 months after the funeral, she came home from therapy with a drawing. It was our family, my mom, me, my sister, and a figure in the clouds looking down at us. Our dad. My therapist says it's okay to still love him, she told me, even though he made mistakes. She says love doesn't have to be perfect to be real. I hugged her tight. Your therapist is right, I said. Do you still love him? She asked. Yeah, I said. I do. I'm angry at him, disappointed in him, wish he'd been braver. But I love him. Me too, she said. My mom was healing in her own way. She got a better job, one that didn't require working 2 shifts. She started taking art classes at the community college, something she'd always wanted to do but never had time for. And she started dating someone, a kind man named Tom, who worked at the local library. Tom knew the whole story. We'd been honest with him from the start, figured it was better to scare him off early than let him get invested and then find out. But he didn't run. He just listened, nodded, and said everyone has a history. On the first anniversary of my dad's death, we went to his grave. All 4 of us. My mom, me, my sister, and Tom. We brought flowers and stood there in silence for a while. I still don't know what to say to him, my mom admitted. I'm still so angry, but I miss him. How can I miss someone I'm so angry at? Because that's how grief works, Tom said gently. It's messy and contradictory and doesn't make sense, but it's real. We stood there until my sister was ready to leave. She'd brought one of her drawings, one of our dad reading her a bedtime story. She placed it on the grave. So you remember the good parts, she said to the headstone, not just the mess. As we walked back to the car, I thought about that funeral, about standing up and telling my stepmom to shut up, about exposing everything in front of 200 people. Some people thought I'd been cruel, vindictive, attention-seeking, but I'd done what needed to be done. My dad had lived in silence, trapped by fear and threats and manipulation. I'd made sure he didn't die in silence too, that his truth was known, that his other family wasn't erased. It wasn't perfect. Nothing about our situation was perfect, but it was honest. And sometimes that's the best you can do. My sister's doing well now. She's 13, starting to find herself. She talks about our dad sometimes, usually the good memories, the pancakes, the homework help, the silly voices he'd do when reading bedtime stories. She's learning to integrate all of it, the good and the bad, into a complete picture of who he was. My mom's genuinely happy for the first time in years. She and Tom moved in together last month. He's good with my sister, patient and kind. He doesn't try to replace our dad, just makes space for all of us, including our complicated history. As for me, I'm working and saving for college. I want to be a lawyer, like Diane. Want to help people who are trapped, who need someone to fight for them. My dad couldn't fight for himself, but maybe I can fight for others like him. Last week, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, postmarked from Oregon. Inside was a short note in my stepmom's handwriting. Thank you for making me face the truth, it said. I'm in therapy now, working through everything. I'll never forgive myself for what I did to him, to all of you. But I'm trying to be better, trying to figure out who I am without the control and fear. I hope you and your family find peace. There was a check enclosed, a large one, made out to my sister's education fund. I showed my mom. She stared at it for a long time. What should we do with it? I asked. Cash it, she said. Your sister needs it for college, and maybe it helps your stepmom feel a little less guilty. Win-win. That night, I lay in bed thinking about everything. About my dad, about my stepmom, about the mess they'd made, about how hurt people, about how fear makes us do terrible things. I thought about that moment at the funeral when I stood up and said, shut up, how everything changed in that instant. How I'd exposed the truth and blown up the lies. Would I do it again? Absolutely. Without hesitation. Because some truths need to be told, no matter how ugly they are. Some lies need to be exposed, no matter how comfortable they've become. My dad lived 2 lives because he didn't know how to fight for one. But I'd made sure that in death, he only had one story. The true one. The messy, complicated, painful one. But the real one. And maybe that's the best legacy I could give him. The truth, finally told. The silence, finally broken. The lies, finally exposed. I stood up during my dad's funeral and told his wife to shut up. It destroyed the pretty picture everyone wanted to believe. It made people uncomfortable. It probably traumatized half the guests. But it needed to be said. And I'd do it all over again. Because the truth matters, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. That's what my dad never understood. That the truth, no matter how painful, is better than a comfortable lie. That freedom, no matter how scary, is better than a gilded cage. He learned it too late. But maybe, through me, through my sister, through the story we tell about him, other people will learn it sooner. We'll fight harder. We'll choose truth over comfort. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all we can ask for. That our mistakes teach others to do better. That our failures become someone else's lessons. I stood up during my dad's funeral and told his wife to shut up. And if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't change a single word.